Now, I'm not going to lie to you, we've missed a couple of weeks. There's been a couple of Tuesdays with no tutorials, but don't you worry, I thought to myself, you know what? This cannot go on. I've been a little bit tied up, little thing I like to call Black Friday, but this cannot go on any longer, and that's why we're back. You know what day it is, I know what day it is. It's Tutorial Tuesday. Welcome back to Tutorial Tuesday, where each and every Tuesday, except for the last couple, we bring you a brand new, fresh photography tutorial. This week, we're doing a reasonably quick tutorial, but it's something that I realized I do in an awful lot of my photography edits. That's right, we're going to dive into Lightroom. We're going to take a look at something that I do. Now, I do this for landscapes, absolutely, for portraits, even for wildlife, for black and white, for color, all kinds of stuff. This is something I use all the time, actually. It's a really useful technique to focus the viewer's attention where you want it to go, and also a way to kind of liven up a little bit more of a dull photo, especially if the light isn't super exciting. Let's dive in. Let's take a look at what I'm talking about. We're actually going to start with this photo. So this is obviously the Shard in London, taken from atop some kind of roof that I was on. I can't remember exactly where it was, but we've got the Shard there. That's the main part of the photo. We've got a very bright sky. And what I want to do is really focus the viewer's attention in more on the Shard. And there's something I do to a lot of photos like this. We're going to go ahead and actually do this with masks. And we're going to add essentially two masks to the photo. The first one's going to be a linear gradient. We're going to bring this in from the top. And what I'm going to do is bring it right down, a little bit like that. So it's just coming down nice and feathered across the sky. I'm going to come over to the mask one, right click, intersect mask with, select sky. And that's going to apply that gradient only to the sky itself. So you can see it's now no longer over the Shard here. What I'm going to do is actually bring that exposure down to sort of darken that sky from the top. Now, the amount you want to do this is going to depend on your own kind of feelings about how you want it to look. How stylized do you want it to look? Sometimes I like to go pretty intense, maybe not that intense. Sometimes I like to go pretty far though. Sometimes maybe a little bit less. For this one, I think we're gonna go for something like that. I'm going to bring in another mask, linear gradient. We're going to bring it up from the bottom. And for this one, again, I'm going to do the exact same thing. I'm just going to bring that exposure down. Now, again, how much you want to do it is going to depend on the photo and also on your personal taste. But for example, in this photo here, if I go back to some kind of global editing here, I might just even bring the highlights down a touch of the overall photo. You can see this is now more directing the viewer's eye to this central part of the photo. We've almost kind of brought in, you know what, it feels a little bit almost cinematic. We're almost bringing in those black bars, right? Changing the aspect ratio, but we're not actually doing that. We're just darkening that top and that bottom, really focusing the viewer into the middle of the image. And here, obviously, we've got our subject. I can actually turn those masks on and off. Let's see what it looks like without. That's without. That's with. I personally think that adds something to the photo. I think it makes the lighting a little bit more interesting because it's just very harsh, direct sunlight, kind of midday sun. And I think it can direct the viewer's eye. Let's take a look at another photo. This one's obviously of a robin. This was taken on a Sigma 100 to 400mm lens. Now, we can actually do the same kind of thing here, but again, we're going to do this really with just the background. So let's go ahead and create a new mask, linear gradient, bring that in from the top down like this. I'm going to go for something like that. I might just move that mask up a little bit. And we can right click, intersect mask with, select background. So essentially what that's doing is just actually applying that gradient mask just to another area. So it's actually only going to apply it where the background is, so not where our subject is. And again, we can just bring that exposure down. We're darkening that background, but it looks quite natural because it's a gradient. I think if you just select the background as a whole mask, it can look a little bit unnatural, but because we're using this as a gradient mask, it makes it a little bit more natural. Let's bring in another mask, so a linear gradient again from the bottom up like this. Right click, intersect mask with, select background. And that again is going to actually not apply it to our subject here. This time it has applied it still to this branch, which I'm probably going to change. So I'm going to bring the exposure down first, but we can make a manual change by hitting subtract here, brush, and I'm just going to brush on where I want this mask to, to not be affected. So I'm essentially subtracting the mask. If you press O, you can see the overlay. And where I'm now brushing, you can see that the brush has a minus. I am actually able to just remove that mask, and it's pretty straightforward. We don't have to be too exact with it. Just going to get it off the feet there and just off the legs. Lovely stuff. And then you can just press O to remove the overlay. So we'll do that. And you can see this looks pretty nice. Now, if we were to actually turn that mask off and then back on, you can see it's making a small difference. Again, with the other mask, it's not a massive difference, but with both together, it's really focusing the viewer's eye onto our Robin friend here. And I think that that can be a really powerful way to edit a portrait, edit a landscape. Let's do one more photo. This one, for example, was taken at sunset. We've got this kind of turret fort thing here at the seafront. These rocks again. We'll do exactly the same thing. Create new mask, linear gradient from the sky down like this. Right click, intersect mask with, select sky, and then just reduce that exposure down. Not too much, but again, it depends how much you want to stylize it, right? Create another new mask, linear gradient, bring that up, and I'm just going to reduce that down again. And once again, you can see that really does just focus the viewer's eye to the center part of the photo. It really draws you into that part. Plus, it does make things a little bit more interesting visually in terms of the sky, in terms of the actual overall look of the image. I'm a big fan of this technique. Now, it's not going to work for every photo. It's not something I'll use in literally every edit, but I will use it for a massive variety of different genres of photography. And I'll use it a lot of the time when I want to give a little bit of style to the photo. And this is kind of one of the only ways I can think to do it, because I want it reasonably natural. It's not overly, obvious that we've done loads to it, but it does make quite a big difference, that end product. Something that you might want to experiment with a little bit, it's a little bit trial and error, it's a little bit personal taste, it's all subjective anyway, but something that I like to use a lot. And so you know what? Worth a video. Now, if there's anything you'd like to see in a future Tutorial Tuesday, let me know down in the comments. It could be editing, it could be actually practical photography, it could be anything at all. Let me know. I always like to make the stuff you guys want to see. Otherwise, you can check out a full list of all the kit used for this video, for these photos, down in the description. I will see you in the next video, but until then, as always, thanks for watching.